never laugh at your deceased. Community. Well, if I can be specific, never do it in the early hours of the morning, like I did. The priest of the church told me that praying and asking them for something is never a good idea. He tells me to just talk to them. But today I want to tell you what happened to me for doing it, for asking them for something, and what they responded. Good evening, community. Thank you for once again listening to these stories, your stories, by tuning into this program where we have gathered some of the most terrifying experiences that have been shared with us. Remember, the best way to help this continue is by sharing these stories of paranormal encounters within your family. So, it's time to go to your parents, to your grandparents, or whoever is close to you, to ask them more, to have them tell you details, and immerse yourself in the history of your family. That is your task. But first, today, you will go through the following stories with us. Close your eyes, as you are already in. Who was a native of a small village in the Oaxacan mountains, had this experience around 1000, a date when it is said that the little angels come to visit their relatives. By little angels, I mean the children who died very young. Some were baptized. Who at that time was a young girl, was only sent to run an errand very early, around 6 in the morning, with her jug to fetch water from the ditch. But it took a long time. Her mother, my great-great-grandmother, Felicitas Ramos, scolded her for not arriving with the water on time. However, the girl then told her that while she was collecting water at the edge of the ditch, she saw many children walking happily along the road. Some were singing, and others were praying, but all looked very enthusiastic. The girl hid behind the bushes because she didn't know them, found it strange, and was entertained watching them walk, jump, and almost dance. She then dared to follow them to see where they were going. To her surprise, she saw them entering houses, but some couldn't do it, and she watched them turn back and head towards the path leading to the cemetery. The girl's curiosity was so great that she followed one of those who couldn't enter without him, noticing until the door, the graveyard. But when the child noticed he was being followed, he turned, took the girl with his hands terribly cold, telling her, "Come with me, then I don't want to return alone." The poor girl tried to let go, but she couldn't. Suddenly, a man passed by who was going to work taking care of his donkeys, and shouted at him, "You leave that girl, kid." The boy ran towards the cemetery, and the farmer was left astonished, as if understanding that what he had just seen was not really a child. No, not alive, at least. The crying girl felt with the farmer a cold that chilled her bones, ran back home without being able to thank the farmer, and barely there told what had just happened to her. And well, that's why the community must put many sweets, bread, chocolate, soda, a glass of water, and other foods on the altar, not forgetting the candles that will light the way to receive the little angels and the faithful departed the next day. Thank you very much, Uriel. And and to the whole community for listening to my story. If you have any to chat with them following the loss of my mother. They cleared out the paperwork from Mr. Anselmo's place that was on the corner, and all of a sudden, they started constructing a store with large windows. It was one of those typical stores that are found everywhere, with the same name. That's when I knew that the end of my little store was approaching. It was a very distressing time. I spent my days crying and crying because they built it so quickly that I didn't even have time to prepare. In just 15 days, they were up and running, and people started to stop coming to buy here. That's when, at night, I began to pray to my mother. I started telling her that if she was there, if she could hear me, to help me, without knowing what the outcome would be. After several nights of praying to my mother, something changed. The house felt different, as if the feeling of being alone had disappeared. I wasn't alone anymore, but that didn't ease my mind. On the contrary, my body, my mind, my chest made me feel constantly in danger. One early morning, while I was seated in front of the small image of the Virgin that my mother always revered, something happened. It was as if something had sneaked into me, as if despair itself had touched my soul. I don't know how much time passed, but at that moment, I heard a whisper. At first, I thought I was dreaming, or that my mind, exhausted by the grief and the whole situation, was playing tricks on me. However, the whisper grew louder, and though the words were unintelligible, they echoed in my head. I am here. I am here. I am here. I am here. That was finally what I understood. And I recognized the voice. It was my mother's voice. My heart was filled with a mix of relief and terror at that moment. But that relief was short-lived because it wasn't her. It couldn't be her, and I knew it well. It went against everything I believed. Tales of distress that presence I thought, or rather wanted to believe, was comforting me became more insistent. Annoying murmurs as if demanding that I continue praying to her, as if she had a very faint smile. The last time I prayed to her was the worst. On that occasion, already desperate, I begged for a sign, for anything. All I wanted was for her to me that it was her, that there was no one else. I told her I was very scared, that she should prove to me that it was her, so I could continue praying to her without guilt. And then I felt it. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I froze, unable to move, and I heard her voice again, as clear as if she were by my side, the voice of my dear mother saying, "No, I am not your mother." Whatever had been answering my prayers, it wasn't her, but responding to her, speaking to me again, with her voice. I realized that everything was a grim mockery of something that was definitely evil, and was taking advantage of me, my distress, my pain, my loneliness, my despair, my mourning. By the time I understood that, it was too late. Since then, I have not been alone. Something lingers here. Something that does not want to leave. Something that feeds on my despair. I cannot sleep. I cannot pray. I just wait, because I know that at some point, it will come for me. It is very strange, but when I am sad, I feel it closer. Over the past few weeks, I have been selling more stationery items here. Things that are not found in the big store on the corner, taking advantage of the fact that Don Anselmo's stationery closed down. The sales have at least provided me with enough to think that I will not go hungry. And the less worried I am, the less I feel that thing that lurks around. That thing pretending to be my mother, whom I unfortunately called, and then did not know how to run away from. The pig helps me, but deep down, I know he doesn't believe me. So, community, you ever feel the urge to ask something from your deceased loved ones? Remember my words. It's not them who listen, but something else, always lurking, waiting for a door to be opened. And once it's done, there's no turning back. Thank you for being here, community, in this October of Tales, where we've had a lot of variety, much activity, and many opportunities to chat with you, which truly makes us extremely happy. Every time we can hear your voices, know what this project means to you. It encourages us to continue for a long time. Everything has a beginning. But as long as you keep responding, as you have so far, as long as night tales help you escape reality for a moment, we will keep working, telling you stories, which is what I enjoy doing the most. Thank you always, community, anecdotes. Oh, years of the town, shares. Even though throughout my life, many supernatural events have occurred, they have been isolated incidents. Some of them, seen as a whole, can be interesting to tell, but they do not cease to be a cliché, like seeing something out of the corner of your eye, or hearing something in the house and realizing that there is no one there. So, at this moment, I'm going to tell you about the most vivid experience that has happened to me. An interaction that actually lasted several minutes, hours, with something that I am not sure belongs to this plane. Several years have passed since this anecdote happened. About 4 approximately, and I am telling you now, because for one reason or another, I had never been able to sit down and write calmly. It was the year 2020, at the beginning of February. If my memory serves me right, it seems that the social isolation due to the pandemic had not yet begun. Although there was already knowledge of COVID in Mexico, we were still living a normal life. It seems like I was about to arrive. I reside in the city of Querétaro, and at that moment in my life, I was studying for my bachelor's degree. At the Autonomous University of Querétaro. This point is significant because the locations I am going to mention feel very relevant, even for those who do not know the city. I would recommend them to locate the streets on Google Maps. It started on a day like any other, beginning my classes in the afternoon, without any major news. During the afternoon, we were informed that we would not have the last two classes. So, instead of leaving at 7 in the evening, we would leave shortly before 8. When the last class of the day ended, it was around 7:50. I waited for my closest friend, as we usually did, to say goodbye or to do something, and take advantage of leaving early, as we used to do occasionally. Once outside the classroom, we immediately exchanged a knowing look, and he beat me to say, "Let's go for a beer or something. After all, it's early." And I replied affirmatively, without hesitation. My closest friend lived just a few minutes away from the college. He, being from out of town, rented an apartment near the school, to be precise on Francisco and Madero Street, almost at the corner of Ezequiel Montes Street. For those familiar with the city, they will know that it takes about 10 minutes to walk from one place to another. So we headed to his flat, stopped for a beer each. In fact, at that time, a new beer had just been released, which was essentially a light beer with lemon and salt, with only 2% alcohol content. That's what we purchased. I mention this because I believe that what happened next could have been influenced by the effects of alcohol. Between the walk from the college and the beer stop, we arrived at his apartment around 8:15. While we were enjoying our beers, we chatted about the usual things expected from a couple of college students: homework, projects, and so on. We finished our drinks. I went to get my phone. Since there were about 5 minutes left before 9 o'clock, I told my friend it was time to leave. Take advantage of the early hour and avoid struggling with the buses. Later on, they tend to be very crowded or take a long time to arrive. Between saying goodbye and walking down to the main gate, a few minutes passed. So by the time I started walking and checked my phone, I think it was just past 9 o'clock at night. I walked along Francisco Madero Street, turned right to join Ezequiel Montes Street, and then reached the bus stop on Zaragoza Avenue. While walking on Ezequiel Montes, I began to notice something strange. Despite it still being relatively early and practically in the city center, the streets were almost empty. In that area, there is usually a lot of movement, but the few people I did happen to cross were acting a bit unusual. Unusual in any way. I would not say they were a type of specter. They just seemed not to be individuals coming out of work or something similar. They were there as I waited at the bus stop, pondering the odd behavior of the few people I had encountered. A sense of unease crept over me, leaving me wondering what mysteries the night held beyond the deserted streets of the city center.